the ROP. I urge members not to hurry themselves to vote. I hope that members will not hurry themselves to vote in favor of the motion moved by Madam Deputy. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Madam Deputy, I stand to speak. I oppose the motion of shortening the division bell time from 5 to 1 minute. It is an in-principle objection, and I'm objecting on the 3 grounds. But before I move on to the 3 grounds, I'd like to say that for this debate on the amendments to ROP is coming to a close. And at this juncture, I hope members would not believe that you have won the war or not. Whether or not the amendments go through or not, this council goes on. The council's business goes on. It is a very important constitutional right. One member's effort may be limited, but the council as a whole has great power. If some members think that it is a fluke because of a few members being disqualified and that you can push through the amendments to the ROP, I hope that you will change your attitude. It would be empty talk to say that we should, in the future, work together and we should rebuild trust towards each other. If these words are true, then we must not hold that kind of attitude in seeing the passage of these amendment proposals. Now, I'd like to go through my in-principle objection of shortening the division bell time from 5 to 1 minute. Some people may gauge the performance of or efficiency of the council in terms of its time, and some may think that the length of debate should be as short as possible. The time of division bell should be as short as possible to show that this council is efficient. This is the view and the mentality of some members here. I am afraid I cannot agree, and that is why, first of all, in principle, I object to the motion to shorten the division bell time from 5 minutes to 1. Because when it comes to efficiency of the council, if it is gauged on the basis of the length of the debate and the length of the division bell time, I don't think it is right. If you truly believe that efficiency of the council should be accorded the top priority, then we can just set aside a lot of other issues in society. Why is it that we should be given the basic human rights? It doesn't mean efficiency. We need to respect the rights of individuals. We need to respect their rights of assembly, freedom of speech, etc. And this could be a cause for this would cause a delay in the social development. But why are we still insisting that for some projects we need to follow the environmental protection requirements? If we believe that efficiency is the only consideration for these projects, we can just totally set aside our values on protecting the environment. Now, this is not what we do, because we don't place efficiency at the top of our list. This is not what the social value is. Madam Deputy, I think that our conduct should reflect the values of our society. If the values of our society don't place efficiency at the top of the list, why is it that we must only focus on efficiency of the Council? Well, Mr. Dennis Kwok, you have actually gone back to the previous debate. Please focus your argument on this division bell debate. I am stating the first ground of objection because I do not think that by shortening the division bell time, the Council will be more efficient. I don't think that by shortening the division bell time, the Council will operate more smoothly. This is my first ground. And if I may conclude on my first ground of objection, if we place everything else behind efficiency, this will be a cold-blooded Council and a cold-blooded society. And this is also the first reason why I oppose this motion. Second point, importance of time. You might think it's a trivial matter to shorten the division bell time from 5 to 1 minute. Why must we be so stubborn? Why? But that also relates to how we view time. I recall a few weeks ago, the House of Lords member Lord Padiashat visited Hong Kong and also met with the President and had a discussion with the President. When he met with the media, he said,
"Timing is everything." 我相信佢嘅意思
I believe that he was saying,
因為對一個
because for the opposition, if they are not able to control time, and meaning the 5 minutes time to be shortened to 1 minute, if the opposition cannot control time, the time, then the opposition will be losing the grip of the only power they have.
做一個好重要嘅
Now, for our political system, I think Lord Ashton has pointed out an important point. That is, for the past 2-3 decades, the opposition has never been the ruling party. So for them to be able to control the time, that's most important. And for the Democrats, they carry the expectations of voters. The voters have entrusted them to do something that's very important. Yes, Mr. Kwok, you are trying to explain your point, but the President has already directed that the purpose of the debate for this motion is to shorten the division bell. And he's also stated that he will end this debate before 6:30. So please be concise. So there is time for another 6 members on the waiting list to speak. Please watch the time. Yes, I'm on to my second point as to why I oppose to this. Because for the opposition camp, the control of time is the most important. Madam Deputy, call for quorum.
請各位議員返回座位。
Members, please take your seat.
喺我請各議員。
Before I invite Mr. Dennis Kwok to speak again, may I invite you to be as succinct as possible so that the remaining 7 members may have an opportunity to speak before the chairman draws a line. What is your point of order, Mr. KK Kwok? Microphone, please. Chair, you proposed that the duration should be shortened to 1 minute. It's inappropriate for you to chair this part of the meeting. I do not have direct pecuniary interest, and my chairing this part of the meeting is perfectly in order. So please take your seat. I've already responded to your point of order, so please take your seat, Mr. KK Kwok. Mr. KK Kwok, please be seated. Members, this is the last part of our motion on amendments to the ROP. So please keep calm so that we can proceed smoothly. I've already said a number of times that whether we can proceed smoothly will rely on our observing the ROP together. I will not allow you this time to express yourself. I've made my decision. Mr. Dennis Kwok, please continue. Members, order. Members, return to your seats. Members, return to your seats. Will members please return to your seats? Mr. KK Kwok, Mr. Jeremy Tam, this is my warning to you. Please return to your seats at once. Mr. Jeremy Tam, Mr. KK Kwok, my last warning to you. If you do not return to your seats, I will regard your conduct as being disorderly. Please return to your seats and stop interrupting the meeting. I've already given you my last warning. Mr. Jeremy Tam, Mr. KK Kwok, since I've given you due warning and you have chosen to violate the ROP and to obstruct the meeting in not complying with the chair's order, I order that you be withdrawn from the meeting.
請各位保持肅靜。
Order, please. Mr. Dennis Kwok, please continue. Thank you, Madam Chair. Before the quorum call, I was on my second point, and that is the control of time is very important to the opposition party. And this is why, in principle, we cannot accept further shortening of the duration of the division bell. And the third point why I am against this motion to shorten the duration of the division bell is time is important to society because time can mend hurts and rifts. If we always put time as our first priority, if we want to compress things, then many things cannot be mended. And that is why we are so concerned about this. If we take efficiency or compression of time as our first priority, then many rifts and also disputes that could be resolved will be sacrificed. But this is because we are so obsessed with time. As a result, many rifts cannot be amended. I note that I have spoken for 10 minutes. I don't want to take up other members' time. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth Low. Madam Deputy, this is the last time I can speak on the ROP amendment motion. As the chairman of the House Committee, you've proposed to shorten the duration of the division bell from 5 minutes to 1. I have 4 points to make, and I will spend a minute or so on each. Madam Deputy, in the past few months, a lot has happened. Well, in fact, in the past 5 years, a lot has happened because, well, we need to reflect on these happenings, and we have to ponder why we have come to this very dark page in our history. Because after the amendments to the ROP, now prior to 2017, I don't believe there was ever such a massive scale of amendments to the ROP. And we are, of course, you have this opportunity, and you have the political opportunity to make such amendments at this stage. But are these amendments conducive to the long-term healthy development of the Council? Let's wait and see. Secondly, why should we reflect on ourselves? It's not just for legislators, but for everyone in Hong Kong who would like to call Hong Kong their home and to stay here. Now, it's been 20 years after the handover. We still have 30 years to go before 2047. Do we want to turn Hong Kong into a third or fourth tier Chinese city? If this is what we want, we might as well continue to get close to one country, one system. Now, of course, this is an entirely open and transparent council. I hope all parties, whether you are from the pro-establishment camp or the pan-democratic camp, to think about this. And we need time. 5 minutes is just a drop in the ocean of history. 2 days ago in this debate, I talked about how Socrates was sentenced to death in Greece. And 2,000 odd years afterwards, the same has happened. The same is happening here. This council has been sentenced to, has been given death sentence. Perhaps you may say that it's not as serious as that, but we need time to think about that. And thirdly, whether we should be given enough time is also a basic human right. And when it comes to human rights, it's not the right to survival as understood in the mainland. Now, this council is for us to make speeches. And if we think that human rights means the right to make a living and to breathe and to use the washroom, then we are no different from animals. So when we talk about human rights, we are talking about the time to reflect and to express ourselves. Lastly, I don't want to be long-winded as well. Just now, Mr. Dennis Kwok asked whether efficiency is of paramount importance in a council, or should other things be just as important. I said that the right to freedom of expression is a basic human right. Yes, the effectiveness is just as important. Even if the pro-establishment members can get what they want today, there is no need for them to be nailed here, to listen to our speeches, and they can leave at 6 p.m. or anytime they want. But the effect, the outcome is a deeply polarized council, which we don't want to see. Now, if we can spend the time available to discuss and pass the amendments that we like first, then we can achieve greater effect. I have a batch, not really a batch, I have a few amendments to our ROP. In the coming year, not the coming one, in the coming year or so before the end of this term, I hope they can go through a due process. Let them be discussed at the Committee on ROP so that we can come to a consensus. Because we have these amendments which we simply didn't have time to discuss. Let's amend them so that we can all feel a bit better. I won't say that time is not important to this council, but it is not the most important determining factor. The quality of the bills we enact and the quality of our business should be the most important consideration. You talked about spending so much money on discussing issues. Do you know this is just overhead? Even your existence is spending money. Ms. Tanya CHAN may disagree. The most environmental friendly way for things to happen is for all of us not to exist anymore. That is the best way to address the problem of pollution to the environment. I think you have digressed too far. I have been saying this to the pro-establishment member. There is amendment in the ROP on election of the president. You are the cause of all these presidents. You had another nationality. You caused chaos here. You should have sorted it out much earlier. Thank you. Dr. Hannah Wong. President, I speak to oppose this motion to shorten the duration of our division bell from 5 minutes to 1 minute. Now, if the shortening is for something good, of course, if it is for a good cause, of course, I will support it. In fact, I once moved a similar motion. That is before the recess at the Finance Committee. We wanted to pass $3.6 billion for education so that students could get the subvention they needed. Teachers could get the contracts they needed. I supported. It was something good, so I supported the motion, although I was scolded afterwards. When it comes to the motions to amend the ROP, should I support the same motion? I oppose now.
Because we have independent thinking. We won't say definitely we will support or vote against the shortening of the division from 5 to 1 minute. If it is good, of course we'll support it so that it can be implemented sooner. If it's an evil bill, if it's something bad, then of course we should not hastily let it pass. This debate over the past few days, at least members from this side of the chamber have been saying that this is one piece of evil motion. When it is passed, a lot of evil bills will be passed in the future. And if we are asked to decide on this, and if this one has a far-reaching implication, we should all keep our heads cool and consider very carefully. Well, some criticize us for being lazy, for not coming to the meeting. But in fact, we are filibustering. Why is it that members who didn't take part in the previous filibustering campaigns also took part in this campaign? That's because the amendments are so unreasonable. You're taking advantage of us while some members have been disqualified. And after the ROP amendments are passed, the bills can be pushed through more easily and more quickly. You believe that you will take away weapons from our hands, and then it will be peaceful from now on. But this is just wishful thinking. Just now, Mr. Ray Chan was asked by the president to leave the chamber, and he urged members who are still in this chamber to say this on his behalf. You might think that by passing the motions, the conduct of the council would be smoother, but he's going to say he is going to revenge by 10 times. I call this an evil exercise because for the 24 amendments proposed by Dr. Martin Liao, their intention is to undermine the power of the Legislative Council. We are already a council with little power. We have little room for real debates on issues, and now power will be taken away from us. Dr. Priscilla Leung said that in the eyes of some members of the public, we are the so-called rubbish council. And I think after this amendment exercise is completed in the future, there will be even more bickering. Why should we undermine our power such that the executive will be able to have all the say? Why should they be able to shun any investigation attempt by the legislature? That is because they don't believe in the system. With the three powers, the legislature should be able to have checks and balances on the government. Maybe the pro-establishment camp doesn't agree with me. Maybe they believe that their powers have not been undermined. Only our power, the powers on our side, have been undermined. Or perhaps you are centralizing the powers on the hands of the president. On the one hand, you're empowering the president. On the other hand, you're undermining the power of the Democrats, the opposition camp, in monitoring the government. Although perhaps this, in the history of the Legislative Council, will be the last time when a pan-Democrat could present a petition to investigate into the link read, and Mrs. Regina Ip also took part in it. But they may say that the Democrats should not be worried because the threshold will only be increased from 20 to 35, and then you may be able to convince Ms. Eunice Yung, Mr. Stephen Ho, and then perhaps the pro-establishment camp will support you as well. But how optimistic? Dr. Helena Wong, please go back to this debate. Mr. President, this is a hoax. Only pro-establishment camp on the other side of the chamber could present a petition in the future, whereas for our side, we are destined not to be able to present a petition unless the other side gives consent. So this is all about authoritarian rule. There is no truth anymore. Everyone should be equal in the chamber, but not so much in the future. So this is the majority rules. But let's not use any pretenses like Mr. Paul Chair, Dr. Martin Liao's speeches today. They think they are righteous, but after all, it's all about taking powers away from us so that all powers will be concentrated in the hands of the pro-establishment camp. I ask this question: would the public expect the pro-establishment camp to do their very best and strive to monitor the government's work? But they are called loyalists for a reason. They need to defend the government, even if there is a cost overrun of $100 billion or whatever sum it is. They will just shut their eyes and allow the funding proposals to be passed. You're empowering the president. You're undermining the power of the opposition, and the result is authoritarian rule in this council. So like Mr. Ray Chan said, are we turning the Legislative Council into the NPC? Dr. Helena Wong, please go back to this debate. You are actually continuing with the previous debate. Mr. President, I'm explaining why we must not shorten the division bell from 5 minutes to 1. This is an evil motion. And if this is motion that is evil, we don't want to see it through. We don't want it to be passed. We want to delay it as much as possible. That is the purpose of filibustering. Of course, we will not support the motion. And, Mr. President, I'd like to talk about Dr. Martin Liao, about the amendments moved by him on behalf of the pro-establishment camp. Altogether, there are 24 amendments. And we didn't have time because, Mr. President, at the outset you gave a non-impartial ruling. Well, each will be given 15 minutes speaking time. Mr. Paul Chair said that, well, you can actually have some division of work in your camp, but this is too late. How can you say that we should have division of work in this chamber, and that there isn't time to go through all the motions and bills here? But this is the constitutional duty of members. Now we see hurdle after hurdle. You're given great powers, Mr. President, whereas we are short of power, and it's already unfair. How do you say with open eyes that this is just? This is not about rectifying the wrong. What we're seeing is that this council is becoming the NPC, is deteriorating, and it has become harder and harder for the council to monitor the government. Mr. President, quite a lot of members had the opportunity to learn from the Parliament in the UK in Westminster. Well, Dr. Helena Wong, I remind you again that you should come back to this debate. I am with this debate. I was talking about the first point, this ROP amendment exercise being an evil exercise. I think the public watching us live would understand this. And I already spent some time explaining why it is evil and the political consequence. The second point is this. There are 24 amendments in Dr. Martin Liao's proposal moved on behalf of the pro-establishment camp. There are also 23 amendments to the Dr. Martin Liao's amendments, including 54 proposed amendments. 54 proposed amendments. If we need to read them one by one, it would take us at least a minute each. well, let's say if you are to take an exam on the 54 proposed amendments, I don't think many members here would know what they are really about. So I oppose the motion of shortening the division from 5 to 1 minute. Mr. President, finally, we oppose this motion. We must not support this evil motion because this council is established on the basis of the rules and orders from the Westminster Parliament. Well, would you call it perfect? Is there any room for improvement? I wouldn't say so. But if we have careful deliberations at the crop meeting, it would be better. But then under the leadership of Mr. Paul Chair, things were just hurried through without any discussion. And then whether or not there are 54 proposed amendments or 24 amendments, there will just be a joint debate with each member given 15 minutes of speaking time. This is hegemony. Mr. President, I really resent the fact that you give us warnings because the amendments to ROP will give you more power, so you should act with humility. We're just addressing the Council for 2 more minutes, and yet you think by doing so, you should give us a warning? How outrageous. You're stepping on the rules of procedure today. Once the amendments are passed, we will be ringing the alarm bell, meaning that we will be departing from a set of rules that will allow us to have peaceful and rational debate in this council. We will be departing from the model of deliberations in Westminster Parliament. Well, of course, the majority rules when it comes to voting on motions will definitely lose because we are in the minority. But we understand that we have the majority vote outside. We ask for 1 person, 1 vote for the CE election, and we also want universal suffrage for the Legislative Council. But 20 years on after reunification, things have remained unchanged. In Westminster, the majority rules, that's true, but there is also a strong emphasis on safeguarding the rights of the minority. The minority's right to speak, the minority's or the opposition's right to make speeches and present petitions, all these rights should be safeguarded. However, today, the pro-establishment camp keep wielding their weapons in order to take this right back from us, so that in the future the opposition will become completely powerless. There is no way for us to retaliate. This is totally shameless. I therefore strongly oppose the motion of shortening the division bell from 5 minutes to 1. We should be put on record this shameless act of the pro-establishment camp. Oppose amendments to the ROP, oppose castration to the Legislative Council. Order. I now propose the question to you, and that is that the motion moved by Ms. Dari Lee be passed. Will those in favour please raise their hands? Mr. Alvin YEUNG claims a division. The bell will ring for 5 minutes.
Voting begins. Please check your vote. If there are no questions, voting is closed. The results are displayed. From functional constituencies, 30 present, 23 for, 6 against. From geographical constituencies, 22 present, 15 for, 7 against. The question is agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members present. I declare the motion passed. I order that in the event of further divisions being claimed at this meeting in respect of the amendments moved, proposed resolutions moved by Mr. Martin Leung under Article 75 of the Basic Law, and amendments to his proposed resolutions, this Council shall proceed forthwith to the division after the bell has been rung for 1 minute. Mr. Jeremy Tam, Dr. K.K. Kwok, Mr. Eddie Chu, and Mr. James Toh have misbehaved, so they have withdrawn from this meeting, so we will not deal with their amendments. Mr. Martin, Dr. Helena Wong, you may move your amendment to Mr. Martin Leung's proposed resolution. President, I move the 7th amending motion as the 7th motion. Yes. Page 24 of the script. President, I move the 7th amending motion as set out in the appendix to the script. I propose the question to you and that the amending motion moved by Dr. Helena Wong to Mr. Martin Leung's proposed resolution be passed. I now put the question to you as stated. Will those in favour please raise their hands? Ms. Tanya CHAN claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Members, please check your vote. If there are no questions, voting is closed. The results are displayed. From functional constituencies, 30 present, 5 for, 23 against, 1 abstention. From geographical constituencies, 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The question is not agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members returned by functional constituencies and geographical constituencies who are present. I declare the amending motion negatived. As Dr. Fernando Cheung has been ordered to withdraw from this meeting due to gross misbehavior, we will not deal with his amending motion. Mr. Lam Cheuk Ting, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Leung's proposed resolution. President, I move the 9th amending motion as set out in the appendix to the script. I propose the question to you that the amending motion moved by Mr. Lam Cheuk Ting to Mr. Martin Leung's proposed resolution be passed. And I'll put the question to you as stated. Will Mr. WU Chi-wai claims a division? The division round will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. The results are displayed. From functional constituencies, 30 present, 6 for, 23 against. From geographical constituencies, 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The question is not agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members returned by functional constituency and geographical constituencies who are present. I declare the amending motion negative. Dr. Helena Wong, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Leo's proposed resolution. President, I move the 10th amending motion as set out in the appendix to the script. I propose a question to you that the amending motion moved by Dr. Helena Wong to Mr. Martin Leo's proposed resolution be passed. Mr. WU Chi-wai claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. The results are displayed. From functional constituencies, 30 present, 5 for, 23 against, 1 abstention. From geographical constituencies, 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The question is not agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members returned by functional constituencies and geographical constituencies who are present. I declare the amending motion negatived. Mr. WU Chi-wai, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Leo's proposed resolution. President, I move the 11th amending motion as set out in the appendix to the script. I propose the question to you that the amending motion moved by Mr. WU Chi-wai to Mr. Martin Leo's proposed resolution be passed. Mr. WU Chi-wai claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. The results are displayed. From functional constituencies, 30 present, 5 for, 23 against, 1 abstention. From geographical constituencies, 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The question is not agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members returned by functional constituencies and geographical constituencies who are present. I declare the amending motion negatived. Mr. Yip Kin Yun, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Leo's proposed resolution. President, I move the 12th amending motion as set out in the appendix to the script. I propose the question to you that the amending motion moved by Mr. Yip Kin Yun to Mr. Martin Leo's proposed resolution be passed. I now put the question to you as stated. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Ms. Tanya CHAN claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. The results are displayed. From functional constituencies, 30 present, 5 for, 23 against, 1 abstention. From geographical constituencies, 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The question is not agreed by a majority of each of the 2 groups of members returned by functional constituencies and geographical constituencies who are present. I declare the amending motion negatived.
We turn to page 36. Mr. Andrew Wang, you may move your amending motion to the Honourable Martin Liu's proposed resolution. President, I move the 17th amending motion as set out in the appendix to the script. I propose a question to you that the amending motion moved by the Honourable Andrew Wang to Honourable Martin Liu's proposed resolution passed. Mr. WU Chi-wai claims the division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. Results are displayed. Members from FCs 30 present, 5 for, 23 against, 1 abstention. Members from GCs 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The question is not agreed by majority respective each of the 2 groups of members. There's those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs through the elections were present. Declare the amending motion negatived. Mr. WU Chi-wai, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution. I move the 18th amending motion in the appendix to the script. I propose the question to you that the amending motion moved by Mr. WU Chi-wai to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution be passed. Mr. WU Chi-wai claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. Results displayed. Members from FCs 30 present, 5 for, 23 against, 1 abstention. Members from GCs 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The question is agreed by majority respective each of the 2 groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GC who are present. I declare the amending motion negatived. Mr. WU Chi-wai, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution. I move the 19th amending motion as set out in the script. I propose the question that the amending motion moved by Mr. WU Chi-wai to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution be passed. Mr. Andrew Wang claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute.
開始表決。
Voting begins.
請核對所作。
Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. Results displayed. Members from FCs 30 present, 6 for, 23 against. Members from GCs 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The questions are agreed by majority respective each of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs through direct elections who are present. I declare the amending motion actived. Mr. WU Chi-wai, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution. I move the 20th amending motion in the script. I propose the question to you that the amending motion moved by Mr. WU Chi-wai to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution be passed. Ms. Andrew Wang claims the division. The bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins.
請核對。
Please check your votes. If there is no question, voting is closed. Results displayed. Members from FCs 30 present, 5 for, 23 against, 1 abstention. Members from GCs 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The questions are agreed by majority respective each of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs through direct elections were present. I declare the amendment negatived. Mr. WU Chi-wai, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution. I move the 21st amending motion in the script. I propose the question to you that the amending motion moved by Mr. WU Chi-wai to Mr. Martin Liu's proposal be passed. Will those in favor? Mr. Andrew Wang claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. Displayed results. Members from FCs 30 present, 5 for, 23 against, 1 abstention. Members from GCs 23 present, 7 for, 16 against. The question is not agreed by majority respective each of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs through the elections who are present. I declare the amending motion negative. Mr. Lam Chak-ting, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution. President, I move the 22nd amending motion as set out in the appendix to the script. I propose a question to you that the amending motion moved by Mr. Lam Chak-ting to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution be passed. Mr. WU Chi-wai claims a division. The bell will be rung for 1 minute.
開始表決。
Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. Results displayed. Members from FCs 30 present, 6 for 23 against. Members from GCs 23 present, 7 for 16 against. The question is not agreed by majority respective each of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs through direct elections who are present. I declare the amending motion actived. Mr. Lam Chak-ting, you may move your amending motion to Mr. Martin Liu's proposed resolution. President. Shameful for the pro-establishment members to castrate themselves against the amendment to the ROP. Objection to amendment to the ROP. Mr. Lam Chak-ting, if you are not moving your amending motion, I will not deal with it. The question to you is that the proposed resolution moved by Mr. Martin will be passed. Ms. Tanya CHAN claims a diversion. The bell will be rung for 1 minute.
請各位議員停止。
Members, please stop yelling in your seats. Quiet, please. Will members please sit down? Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. I display the results. Members from FCs 29 present, 22 for, 5 against, 1 abstention. Members from GCs 22 present, 15 for, 7 against. The question is agreed by a majority respective of each of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs through direct elections who are present. What is your question? My earpiece has a problem. My voting system has a problem. Order, please. Mr. Gary Chan, my voting system is problematic. I voted for the motion. Mr. Gary Chan, please put on record that Mr. Gary Chan is for the motion. I think the question is agreed by a majority respective of each of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs through direct elections are present. I declare the proposed resolution passed.
Members, this meeting is the last. Yes, Dr. Martin Liu. Mr. President, yes, Mr. Martin Liu. Well, I tried to press the button, and when I pressed the button, it was blinking. I tried it several times, and it was still blinking. We'll put on record that Dr. Martin Liu voted in favor of the motion. I hope members would make good use of this break. We have the winter solstice, Christmas, and also the New Year. And throughout this period, please stop and think and spend more time with your beloved and also your family members. I would like to, on behalf of members, thank the Secretariat for the hard work over the past few months. They've been subject to huge pressure, especially the security staff of the Secretariat. I hope that you won't eat too much turkey during this holiday because Turkey is not the phoenix. The Council will be adjourned until the 10th of January 2018, 11 a.m.